But for purposes of this conversation, I'm also the executive director or the team leader at Ngumokio Mentorship. And Ngumokio Mentorship is a program that mainly targets young men aged between 20 to 35 years of age. And I hope that before I leave this place that I'll be able to get some young men who might be interested in enrolling and being part of our upcoming mentorship cohort. So we provide mentorship for these young men, and we hope we provide this mentorship because we believe that men, for some reason, whether, and I do not want to blame it on the empowerment of women, just like so many people have done, we've discovered that so many men are just there. They are lost. They are lost. They have voices, but for some reason their voices cannot come out. They have hopes, they have dreams, they have aspirations, but somehow, for some reason, we've noticed that men have increasingly become disempowered. And that's why we started Ngumokio. So we provide mentorship. And the mentorship is on all aspects of life, not just your professional life, but also your personal life. So we empower men. And through my sharings this afternoon, I will share some of the learnings that I've gotten from interacting with young men that are part of that cohort at Ngumokio. Every time I meet people, people ask me, what does Ngumokio mean? And Ngumokio means, it's brought from, it's a derivative term, and it comes from 3 Swahili words. First of all, nguvu, which is a Swahili word for strength. Men are supposed to be strong, yeah? At Ngumokio, we believe in the strength of men, whatever that strength looks like. Not the strength in terms of physical strength, otherwise some of us would not be men, because I'm sure if I fought with some colleagues in here, they would beat me up because I'm not stronger than they are. The other building block, which also contributes to the name Ngumokio, is mafanikio, and that's success. We believe that men must be understood from the context of success. And at Ngumokio, we believe that success is anything that men want it to be. So if a man woke up today and said that for him, his measure of success is being able to teach a class, another man should not have to tell him that teaching a class is something effeminate, because that man has determined that teaching is what he considers to be success, okay? Then the last building block is pamoja, which is unity. And indeed, we believe that the only way men can move forward is if they unite under shared ideals and actually march together. And it is on that basis that I will challenge the current organizings that men have. And for the men in the room, you will tell me whether I'm lying or not. I have noticed that whenever women organize around shared ideals. The sisters in the room will tell you that whenever they have a problem, they will reach out to their friend and they'll tell them, I have this challenge. And the friend will react and will respond to that challenge, not through judging the person who has shared this challenge, but by suggesting solutions that could actually help the person who has the challenge. But how do men organize? When you have a challenge and you tell your best friend as a man, what does your best friend tell you? The first thing he does is he laughs at you, not so. How did you get there? He's just going to first laugh at you, you know? Now, for so many men, that's the reason why so many keep quiet. Because if I come to you as a challenge, with my challenge, and you treat it as a joke, why should I open up to you the next day? And that's the reason why men are jumping off buildings, because they do not have, by and large, people to talk to, people that they can confide in. The other form of organizing for men is premised around things like material gain. What do I have? So men will organize because tulibagaga, you know, we are rich. So anyone who tries to aspire to come and be part of that organizing has to match up in terms of the money. But what happens to the men that are hustling every day and for some reason cannot get that money? What happens to them? Can we say that they should not organize, for instance? Look at your uncles in the village when you go for Christmas celebrations. Who are the people who talk? It is the uncles with money. The uncles without money do not talk. If anything, those uncles, you have to find a way of being useful. Either you do the dishes, something which is considered effeminate, or you do something else. But, when we are collecting money and all that, that's where we assume that the men are supposed to be. So today, ladies and gentlemen, I am here to speak about the role of men and boys in advancing sexual, reproductive health and rights. And I started with that little bit of a preamble to help you understand that for the longest time, sexual reproductive health and rights have been erroneously considered to be something effeminate. Have I lied? Every time we talk about sexual reproductive health and rights, don't we mean that within the context of women? Every time we talk about SRHR, don't we say, those are women's issues? But I am here to debunk that myth because it's actually a myth. Yeah. So first of all, let us try to understand why we are where we are. So a long time ago, men presumably sat in a little room like this, and they determined and they said, you people, we need to start up something we need to start a system that benefits men, and we must call this system the what? Let me see if people are following the what? The patriarchy. This system that purports to put men above women, okay? So these people agreed and they said, look, we shall put in place work that is primarily for men and work that is primarily for women. So we shall say, for instance, that lifting heavy, really heavy things is a work for. And doing, if you're doing interior design and you're a man, it seems there is a problem there because design is for what? That design, these color things, beautifying the walls and all that all these things are what? They are things for women. So that belief moved on for generations and generations and generations. Now, when you get this system, the patriarchy, and you mix it with another system called capitalism, you have men who have to consistently work to live up to the label of what? Being men. Because that system defined for us who men and women were. The system said men, you are a man because you are strong. You are a man because regardless of whatever problems you face, you must remain strong. You are a man because you are able to provide for your family. So later on, when men were unable to provide for their families, they started killing themselves because they felt they had lost their purpose. They felt that because they did not have a job and because they could not provide for their families anymore, they were now useless. That, first of all, is where the problem comes from. Now, because of that, it's something that I like to call the masculine law of unintended consequences. That you start and you develop a system, and then the system turns around. It's like building a house and then the house falls on you. And that's exactly what has befallen so many men. And I hope that I'll also be speaking to the experiences that some of the men in this room have actually experienced. Okay? So, first of all, in identifying that SRHR has erroneously been considered a women's subject, men have kept away. Now, because of keeping away, we've discovered as practitioners, as policymakers, that by men keeping away, it's actually hurting our SRHR indicators. Now, indicators are things that point you to whether someone is making progress or not. And I'll give us an example. According to the 2016 Universal UDHR, that is the Uganda Demographic Health Survey Report of 2016, it found that for every 100,000 live births, we have 336 deaths. Okay? That is so high. If you were to compute that, it translates to about 16 women dying every single day due to being pregnant. I will give you a moment to reflect on that. Every day, up to 2016, 16 women were dying every single day. A taxi, the moment you see a taxi, 16 women sitting in that taxi were passing on. Those are so many. Those are so many women. That's every day. If someone can help me compute that, if you do 16 times 7, I don't know how much that translates to per week, per month, and all the way up to per year. That's so many. But men have a role to play in some of those complications. Why? Maybe because men were not accompanying these women to go for antenatal care. And by the time the women discover that there's a complication with the pregnancy, it is too late at that point, okay? So this number has now reduced. I think the number has come down to about 200 something, which is still an inordinately high number. And yet men can play a role in reducing those numbers, because how many men here would be comfortable with losing, you know, whether it's a sister, whether it's a spouse, whether it's an aunt, whether it's a mother? How many men here would be comfortable? How many men would say, 16 women dying every single day, and I don't mind, that seems so little. How many men in this room can actually think about that and think that? None. I'm very happy to see that no man has put up their hand. You know, you can sit in a, you know, in a room with men, and some men put up their hands and say, no, there is absolutely no danger in that. So it's a very good thing that the men in this room do not consider someone's death as something that empowers them or something that makes them better men. So, again, I am making the argument this afternoon that SRHR is not a women's issue. It is fundamentally a human rights issue. And if you look at it as a human rights issue, we cease to look at it as something that only women need to pay attention to, but we look at it from also the context of how we as men can also contribute to some of those discussions. Secondly, SRHR is also a public health concern, and that's why as men we need to be concerned. When we talk about the prevalence of HIV in this country, if as a man you are not concerned, there is a problem. Because the higher the HIV prevalence rate, even if we were to say the prevalence rate among women is very high, as men, the reason why you need to worry is because you are ultimately sleeping with, you're ultimately sleeping with these women who are carrying, you know, who are carrying the virus, for lack of a better for lack of a better word. So as a man, you need to be concerned. You need to pay keen attention, because ultimately, if we're talking about high HIV prevalence rates, it means that as a man, your chances of getting HIV increase, because if we're saying so many people are sick, then it means that as a man, you need to question and ask yourself, okay, this person that I'm sleeping with, are they protected? Can I protect myself better? So over and above, SRHR should not just be construed merely as something, you know, we've had sex with a girl, let me give her an emergency contraceptive pill and that's it. And the reason why for so long that has been the case is because even policymakers are lost. They do not know how to involve men. So the clearest example I'm going to give is the Ministry of Health passed a policy where they were encouraging women to make sure that they go to health centers with their partners. Now, what has been happening is that whenever these women go to the health centers with their men, the men reach there and they do not know what to do. They don't know what to do. So what am I supposed to do? I'm at the health center. I've seen other men. They've also come. Do we sit and we talk about the the different pregnancy complications that our wives are going through. What exactly should men do when they go to the health center? And of course, I do not have the answers to some of this because, again, it's a question that policymakers are still grappling with. So what is happening now is that men are escorting their wives, but when they get there, instead of understanding why they are there, they go and look for other men. And then when they meet with these other men, they talk about Declan Rice and how he scored those two very amazing free kicks against Real Madrid. You understand? So that's exactly where the policy gap is. So we are designing programs, but we've not consulted the men to ask them. So if you go to a health facility, how would you want this process to actually go? And that's the whole essence of male engagement and why we need to engage men to ensure that when we're designing policies to do with SRHR, that we consult with men like you and we ask you, if we have young men in this room, and I don't know how many of you are gamers, is it that you want health centers to be fitted with PlayStation 4s so that as you're waiting for your wife to go through the scan, you can play FIFA with your boy, yeah, as you wait? Is it to say that that's something that would encourage more and more men to want to go to, to attend to some of these programs? Again, I leave the question back to you. Again, the reason why we need to, as men, to be concerned is that investment in maternal health, for instance, and all other parameters of SRHR are actually an investment in the general well-being of us as men. That if you empower your wife to, for instance, get access to SRHR services, for instance, to treat an infection, you are essentially also preventing yourself as a man from getting that actual infection. So the other point I would like to talk about this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, is as men, it's important that we challenge dangerous and harmful norms and practices, because when we challenge these norms and practices, we also benefit as men. And I will try to elaborate and give us an example of why that is the case. For instance, if you're a Muganda in this room, you've probably heard of a number of proverbs that talk about men, or sayings that talk about men. For instance, the Baganda like to say, abasajja mivule. Huh? Do we understand what that statement means? Abasajja mivule, that men are like trees. You know the muvule tree? The muvule tree is a very strong tree whose roots, can spread, As I'm talking about roots, I hope the men in this room are understanding what I mean by spreading your roots. You see how that in itself is dangerous? Because when you're encouraging, when you tell men, abasajja muli mivule, what that means is that you're telling them every skirt. But that's actually dangerous. The Baganda also say, omusajja tabalirwa ki? Tabalirwa nzaalo, that you cannot count how many children a man has had. That's very dangerous. In an era where we have all these infections and all that, that's actually very, very dangerous. So as men, sorry? Please, this is an interactive session. If you feel like there is something else that you would want to say, please feel free to put up your hand and you could supplement on the discussion.